Now, before I get into like the whole review, I'm just gonna address one simple fact that happened at the very beginning of the chapter that I think could be quite an interesting thing to consider, especially for the future of my hero, which is Gigantomachia. Now, this man or monster, dude, woman, I don't know what it is, okay, but whatever Gigantomachia actually is, that thing's sense of smell is absolutely incredible. He went for a sniff and found out where Shigaraki was like in a split second. Like there was no time at all, and he has found Shigaraki's position immediately, and he is now on his way, and it looks like he's going really fast. Like this dude is not holding back when it comes to speed. Like you'd think someone as big and bulky as Gigantomachia that he would be quite slow, but it turns out, you know, he's not really slow at all based on what we saw at the beginning of the chapter, where he seemingly leaped towards the town that Shigaraki and everyone is in right now. And I think, you know, whenever he gets there, we might be getting a descent kind of situation where he might be coming from above, completely leaving a crater. I'm not really sure, but I have a feeling we might get something like that because he seemed like he was really going for a big leap there. Now, I'm not really sure if he was leaping up into the sky or, you know, along the ground. I imagine it might be along the ground, but at the same time, if he can do something like that with such speed, like he can probably do a big jump as well. And I mean, if you think about it, a big jump for someone like Gigantomachia is probably the most effective way of traveling at this point, because he doesn't really want to attract too much attention to, you know, the authorities. He doesn't really want to be seen because that's just gonna slow him down getting to Shigaraki and stuff. So I definitely believe that he's either gonna come from above or underground when you really look at it from what I just explained. Like you don't really want to attract too much attention to yourself as someone like Gigantomachia, who is supposedly a very known threat, especially at least to Gran Torino, who he seemed to know the name of this beast. And personally, I think that means that at least UA know that Gigantomachia is a thing. Like I think they are fully aware of his existence, his identity, maybe not, you know, everything about him, but at least by name and just what threat level he's at right now. I think all of the big shots that need to know. Alright, so we really need to talk about Hawks, because in this chapter Hawks made a return, and we see, from what I was able to understand it, it's like two different times. We see him in the past and in the present, I guess, and in the present he's trying to get a hold of Dobby, but he's really worried why Dobby or anyone else in the league haven't been cited by the Hero Network or anything. You know, he's looking through the Hero Network and, you know, the League of Villains aren't appearing anywhere. He's really concerned, or well, not concerned, but he's really curious as to why that is. And obviously Hawks trying to infiltrate the League of Villains, he's really hoping that they contact him. Like that is his whole game plan. He needs to get into the League of Villains, and if they don't make contact with Hawks or anything like that, he can't progress that mission. He has nothing to go on without them. And obviously we see how, and this is what I mean when I say I think it's the present and the past. In the past, from what I was able to really tell, he's carrying this bag and, you know, he's talking to Dobby on the phone, and Dobby really wants to make sure that, you know, Hawks is actually the real deal and he's not just trying to play them. You know, as you would imagine, like he obviously knows that Hawks is number 2 hero, and he wants to really make sure that Hawks is not playing them for fools. So he asks him to, you know, make a move on a different hero, one that isn't the number 1 hero. And Hawks, being the guy that he is, he goes for the number 3 hero. I mean, I bet he would go for the number 2 hero if he wasn't number 2 himself. So he goes for Best Genius, who is kind of off duty right now, but as we saw in this chapter, he's planning on going back because there's so many people that need to be reformed. As we know, Best Genius, his specialty is reforming people who kinda ended off on the wrong foot, so to speak, as we saw with Bakugo's internship after Sports Festival when he was kinda groomed and stuff. You know, Best Genius trying to turn him into a good boy kind of thing. Like that's the sort of thing that Best Genius is well known for, I guess. Like that's his specialty, so to speak. Like that's what his office is doing, from what I was able to tell anyway. And yeah, so Hawks makes a visit to Best Genius, and he has this bag with him. Now the bag is something that's really curious. Like what is he planning to do with the bag? Because we don't really know what's in the bag, or if it's empty and something is intended to be inside of it when he's done. Because a lot of people have been speculating that Best Genius has been killed by Hawks. I personally personally don't think that is the case, simply because of the fact that I don't see why Hawks would kill Best Jeanist when he's in fact on the side of heroes. He's just trying to play the League of Villains as far as we know. I mean, he could be making like a quadruple play here and just be on the villain side in the end, but I personally don't think that is the case, simply because, well, I don't want that to be the case, I'll be honest with you. Like, there's nothing really backing that in my opinion, because, well, why would he cast away the heroes and go for the villains? Best Jeanist, for instance, hasn't done anything to deserve such a fate, so I think Hawks is going to be the reasonable one and actually be on the good side. But obviously after their encounter, we see how Hawks is actually touching the bag, and I guess that's why people think he has something in the bag after his visit with Best Jeanist. Me personally, I'm kind of thinking he has been making a plan with Best Jeanist and he's going to play the League of Villains anyway. And if you want to know what I mean by that, I can explain that. What I think he's done, I believe he has somehow been able to fake some kind of proof that Best Jeanist has been dealt with. Now, I'm not really sure how, to be honest, because at the end of the day, he can't like create a fake head or anything. I don't even think Best Jeanist can do that. Maybe he can with the strings, but if he can't, well, that's gonna be a bit of a problem. But let's assume that, you know, Hawks were to use his actual powers as the number 2 hero. Now, wouldn't that make for a convenient way of abusing that power? Well, not abusing, to be honest. It's more like he's making use of the higher authorities that have put him on this mission. And they will probably let him, for whatever reason, get a fake version of Best Jeanist's head. Now, that would be really interesting, at least in my opinion, if he was to actually present a fake severed head of Best Jeanist to the League of Villains. And that would kind of make sense in a way why he's so eager to meet with Dobby again, because he has this fake head on him and he wants to really bring that to the League of Villains and progress his plan. You know, I guess that would make sense when you think about it. Even if it's the real head, that would still make sense. But as I said, I don't really think it's a real head, simply because of how I believe Hawks is a good guy at the end of the day. If you think he's a bad guy, you know, that's fine. I'm not gonna judge. Me personally though, I just don't see that being the case. I do, however, hope that Hawks ends up being a more prominent character in this arc, and that is not just gonna be part of this one chapter. That would be really cool to see. If he's actually gonna be someone that reappears later on in this arc, maybe even happen upon this town that this war is taking place in. Now, if Hawks were to actually appear in that town, now that would make things interesting, because as a hero, he has to be a hero. A lot of people are gonna recognize him, and if he's a bad guy, well, that's definitely gonna cause a lot of problems for him, I think, because if people do in fact recognize him as Hawks, which I'm pretty sure they will, they're gonna have so many cards to just expose Hawks as a villain, and I just don't really know if that's gonna happen, you know. Which is why him getting to that town would be like a 50-50 depending on, you know, what side he's actually on. And even if he's trying to bluff being a villain, this could really expose him as a villain, even if he is in fact a good guy, which I personally think will happen. Like, I definitely think Hawks is going to be, well, I wouldn't say framed, but he's going to be looked upon as a villain. He's gonna be exposed as a bad guy, even though in reality he's actually a good guy. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about is Shigaraki, Spinner, Twice, you know, the League of Villains versus Quirk Liberation Army, which was like the second half of the chapter. We see how Shigaraki and Spinner are struggling against all these people. This is, of course, before Twice's clones actually make it to Shigaraki and Spinner, which makes sense. I mean, obviously, they're not gonna make it to everyone, you know, on time, you know, because everyone's probably like spread out and stuff like that. So some people are gonna be further away from Twice, meaning that Shigaraki and Spinner in this case, they had to wait a little bit until the army of clones eventually got to them. And when they did things change for the better? Oh yes, it did, because Shigaraki was pretty much saved by Twice, and you know, from this point Shigaraki is going to be having help from a lot of clones. You know, obviously he's gonna be in a lot less danger now, and him being the leader of the League of Villains, he's gonna need that kind of protection. I think, like, if he were to die, you know, that would be kind of bad, let's be honest, especially since he is the final villain, well, supposedly the final villain of the series, you know. And it just goes to show you that even the big shots sometimes need help. They can't just do everything on their own. Much like a protagonist cannot do everything on their own, they're gonna need help, they're gonna need allies and stuff like that, and this applies to Shigaraki as well. It's just one of the many parallels between Shigaraki and Deku, and that's something that I really like to see. Now, what was really interesting in this chapter was obviously that they were trying to progress towards the tower that Redestro and Giran are in. Well, they think they're in, and as it turns out, they were. And obviously, the closer they get to this tower, the more people start appearing, and it becomes so much harder harder for them to actually get anywhere, and that's when Twice comes into the picture and paves the way a lot easier. And at the end of the chapter, we see how one of Twice's clones, well, I think it's a clone, it could be the real Twice, I'm not quite sure, it's really hard to tell, let's be honest, but I'm going to assume that it's a fake one because I'm pretty sure the real one has Toga in his arms. And obviously him making it up there is going to be really interesting, but Shigaraki did say that Twice is not going to be enough to save Giren simply because he likes Giren too much. Now, I'm not exactly sure what that means. Maybe it means that Redestro has a really easy way to exploit that by using Giren against Twice, and I think that's very likely because they have the profiles on everyone, so they probably know just how close they are to everyone as well. At least I would imagine they do, and if that is the case, then obviously Twice is not a lot of trouble. Giren is going to be used as a hostage, and that could inevitably get Twice, well, at least his one clone or whatever it is, captured as well. So, you know, ultimately I definitely think Spinner, or at least, well, maybe not Spinner, but at least Shigaraki will need to get up to that tower in order to finish things, and that makes a lot of sense, having the final villain being taken down by the main antagonist, or in this case, because this is My Villain Academia, it's gonna be the main protagonist of the arc, quite interestingly. Now at the very end I found a really interesting piece of dialogue, which was that Redestro mentioned that Miyashita, which was like the hamster looking dude at the very beginning of the arc that he eventually killed because he didn't really seem to agree with Redestro's ways of liking, well, Destro, I guess. So he killed that guy, and he said in this chapter that he really liked his sense of humor a lot more than Twice's sense of humor. So I just thought it was a really cool way to really point out that, you know, even though he did kill that guy, he knew that guy and he had some good qualities that Redestro really enjoyed while he was still around. So there's definitely some emotion deep inside of Redestro, even if he did end up killing him, and he certainly doesn't regret killing him. Anyway, that has been my review of chapter 231 of My Hero Academia. I hope you liked this chapter. I love this chapter mostly because of Hawks, let's be honest, but even so, a solid chapter in my opinion. I would love to know what you guys think about this chapter of My Hero Academia down below in the comments, and as always, if you did, be sure to Detroit smash that like button if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. This has been Chaotic Plus, and remember everybody, Toga is waifu, Toga is laifu.